Our last story before the break, M. Come on up.
So the title of this story is Fledgling. 1986, August, my mom, my dad, my sister, and our Mexican exchange student pile into my dad's tomato red Buick Skylark. They're taking me to Tulane University. I don't know how all of us and my stuff for the dorm fit in the car. We spent 2 or 3 days driving, and all I can remember from that trip is Texas, Texas, and more Texas. Texas goes on forever. We got to New Orleans, and I don't know what happened to Mom and Dad and the rest of the family. They kind of disappeared into the abyss of my past. I made it in time for freshman orientation and got my room set up. I had red and teal comforter. I don't know what made me choose those colors. But as any good bird teaching someone to fly, there were 2 things that happened. One is most birds just kick their birds out of the nest and they learn to fly from the ground right below the family nest. We had to drive 1,300 miles in over 20 hours. Get to school, and like a good bird, Mom and Dad got me a meal plan. Birds take care of their birds and make sure they have food for a while. So I got the meal plan, but college dorm food, kind of questionable, and I was a picky eater. So luckily, Mom was looking out for me. I got a toaster oven, and I got a teapot, an electric teapot, so I could make some quesadillas and some macaroni and cheese. I wasn't going to starve. I was off at school for the first time, away from my family. Tulane had about 10,000 or more students, and there was only one person there besides me that I knew. It was the first crush I ever had in my life in kindergarten. He was there, but the truth is, I only saw him once in the entire school year. So really, I was at school all alone. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew my family. I could be anyone I wanted to be. Back at home, I hadn't really fit in, though I was kind of like a chameleon. I could fit in with anybody, though I didn't feel like I fit in. I was different with this group and that group and this group and that group, but I wanted to be all of me. I didn't really know how to do that, so I stayed up all night playing cards with my peers. We played pinochle and talked philosophy in an 18-year-old sort of way. We were asking the meaning of the world and how I fit in and how you fit in and what our place in the world would be. We were excited to be exploring all of these kids who'd never been away from home for the first time, and the few that had been at boarding school. They had a little wisdom for us. There were explorations of all kinds. Being in New Orleans was very different from being where I'd grown up. I grew up in Denver. Denver was a mile-high city, much like Prescott, and the climate was very different from New Orleans. That 5 feet below sea level, surrounded by lakes and the Gulf, which has now been renamed. That's a whole other story. And the muddy Mississippi. I'd never seen a river that big in my life, and it was filthy. The only thing I saw for rivers in Colorado were these cute little creeks that were crystal clear, and you could drink out of them if the water was running fast enough. I wouldn't want to put anything to drink near the Mississippi or take anything to drink from the Mississippi. The other thing about New Orleans was, and in contrast to Denver, was the forests. In the Rockies, we have evergreen forests and aspen forests, and the aspen forests always bring a smile to my face. The leaves kind of twinkle and it's bright and light. Well, the forests in New Orleans are called swamps. The trees are close together and they have moss hanging off of them and all around the bark. And it's in water. They're in water, standing water. What's in the water? I don't know. It's not a forest that's very inviting to me, especially with the stories of New Orleans. It's kind of dark and mysterious. What's hiding in those swamps? We'll never know, and I'm certainly not going to go find out. I was on a mission to make choices for the first time in my life. I remember riding the streetcar, the famous St. Charles streetcar down to the Quarter. The locals called it the Quarter. Everyone else calls it the French Quarter. But we'd take the streetcar to the Quarter, and along the way, we'd see the Garden District of New Orleans. It's where the big, beautiful mansions are with big trees and lush gardens. We'd get down to the Quarter, and sometimes we'd go to Café du Monde and have some café au lait and beignets and watch the pigeons all around. Sometimes we'd go to the Quarter and get a hurricane, walk on the streets. Bourbon Street was a thing with all the bars. It's kind of fascinating for an 18-year-old, but honestly, not really my thing. Again, I was more interested in figuring out who I was and how I fit in the world. Back home in Denver, my parents had kept a really tight leash on my sister and I. They had rules. Everything was supposed to be their way, their rules and their punishments. I could never understand. They always seemed sort of erroneous. I remember many nights sitting at the dinner table long after everyone else had finished because I was told I had to clean my plate. There were people starving in other parts of the world. Eventually, they'd let me go to bed with a promise that I'd get my leftovers for breakfast. Luckily, that never happened. They also had a rule in the summertime that we had to be in bed by 7:30. Most of you were running around your neighborhoods till the lights came on. Not me. I had to be in bed. Why? I never understood. I remember sitting there when I was supposed to be in bed asleep, looking out the window at all the kids running around the neighborhood. I was mad. I was frustrated. I was angry. How come I had to be in bed? The lights hadn't even come on yet. Anyway, back to college. I'd chosen Tulane because, well, my parents wanted a good life for me. They wanted me to finish college, go to college, finish college, and have a good career, because neither one of them had done that. So I decided after lots of exploration that I wanted to be an architect. It was a career that I could get behind. And then the decision was, which school? Well, I ended up choosing Tulane because it had a very practical program, and besides, it was in a fun place. So, happy to be at Tulane, not so happy about classes. And it wasn't even that I wasn't happy about classes. It was that back at home, I'd never learned natural consequences. So now I was able to make choices for the first time in my life. So instead of choosing to go to classes on the regular and any normal way that my mom would have said I had to do, I went to classes where I enjoyed the teacher, the professor, or I enjoyed the class, and the rest, well, I didn't make it to. So I ended that school year. Oh, wait, I got to come back to Mardi Gras. I was in New Orleans. I can't forget about Mardi Gras. And that ties into Lisa's story. As you can imagine, I had a couple friends from Denver come to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. And one of them was a 6'4" guy, and I got to sit up on his shoulders and look over the crowd for the parades. That was fun. But the thing that was most significant about Mardi Gras that year was what I heard. You in the red, show your tits! You in the red, show your tits! And I'm looking down going, oh, I'm the one in red. I had a red cashmere sweater on. I got to make a decision. Was I gonna... It was daylight, and I hadn't had a drink. Wasn't happening. Anyway, I ended that school year with a dismal 1.82 GPA. Not because I couldn't have gotten a really great GPA, but because I was making choices for the first time in my life. And now I got to deal with the natural consequence for the first time in my life. I didn't get to go back. I'd lost my financial aid. But I learned what a natural consequence was, which I spent many years figuring out. And I figured out that my life is about finding my place and my wholeness in the world and sharing that with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Em. Appreciate that. Em spent the majority of her life, I know this will shock everybody, of living her life on the fringe of society. And is excited to be jumping into the arena of life here in Prescott, beginning with getting on stage and telling a story for the first time. In her previous life, Em was a stay-at-home mom, a homeschool mother of 4, and raised her kids in an Airstream RV trailer before either homeschooling or tiny homes were a thing. I can't even imagine that. I just picture the trailer, it's like, wow. Em is an intuitive advisor, coach, writer, and facilitator. In this phase of her life, she's planning to get published and be on speaking stages. So, thank you, Em.